Okay, Ben, have you ever stayed with something not because it's great and you love it, but just because changing feels like it's gonna be too much work to change?
Once or twice. You're talking about every single streaming subscription that I pay for, I think.
I mean, that's a perfect example, right? I mean, how many of us have some streaming that we don't watch anymore? We got it because that one show was on there, but then it just stuck, right? Or we did the 7-day trial and we just stuck with it, right?
Yeah,
So,
and it's not that we're loyal to it, right? We're just kind of stuck in the status quo.
yeah, well, and that's it. So, welcome to the status quo bias.
And welcome to Behavior Shift, where we explore the science behind why we do what we do and how to do it better.
And today, we're going to be talking about one of the quietest forces shaping our lives, your lives, you know?
It's the choices that we do not make, right?
Yeah, yeah. So status quo bias is our tendency to prefer things to stay the same, to just be consistent, right? Even when there are better options out there, better things available.
Yeah, and what Kurt's talking about here is the idea that doing nothing actually feels safer than doing something in these situations.
Exactly, Ben. And this idea was formulated, kind of formalized in research by a couple researchers, William Samuelson and Richard Zeckhauser, and they did a really interesting study where they showed that people are that when people are given this default option, that they overwhelmingly stick with the default, even when the alternatives are objectively better. That if you were to ask anybody, they would say A is better than B, yet I'm with B, so I'm not gonna switch to A, or vice versa. Yeah.
So even with a better option in front of you, your default becomes your inevitable destiny.
Well, I hope not, but that's probably a great way of putting it, right? So, yeah. Oh.
Okay, so why are we like this? Why do we do this? Is it just pure laziness? Are we lazy? Is that why we're doing it?
Alright, so it can look like laziness, but it's deeper than that. So there are, a few different behavioral forces, some brain science kind of things that are working together. So the first is loss aversion. We've talked about that on the show before, right? We tend to feel losses more strongly than the equivalent gain, a concept popularized by Kahneman and Tversky, right?
So changing feels risky, and it's because we are actually afraid that we might lose something by enacting upon that change.
Right. So even if the upside's bigger, there's a chance that we're not experiencing it. So the future is unknown. So there's a chance that it's actually worse. Even though we know it looks better, it sounds better, it's there, in the back of our heads, there's this little voice going, but it could you're okay with what you're doing. That streaming service, hey, what if you wanted to watch a show on it and different things? And so there is that component of a loss. Um, but the second component of this is that it's effort. It requires energy, it requires attention. You got to make the decision. I mean, you ever tried to, like, get rid of a streaming service? It's a little bit of
Yeah,
work.
it's really
Yeah.
frustrating. It's getting
Yeah.
easier, but the
Yeah.
sludge is still there. So our brain is looking at this, and regardless of the payoff, we're analyzing that risk and the energy that goes into that decision, and we're asking ourselves, is this worth it?
Yeah. I think that's a great way of putting it. And, the answer is, not today. Nope, it's not worth it. Not worth it. I don't have that 10 minutes it's gonna require me to go out, log in, do all the stuff, cancel it, hit no 5 times, whatever that would be, right? So, yeah, it's this component of we just is the effort worth it? Loss avoidance. And then the third is a concept called regret avoidance, right? So if you stick with what you have and it's not great, you can blame the situation.
Mhm.
Um, but if you change and it goes badly, well,
That's your fault. It's on you,
yeah,
and you have to live with that.
yeah, exactly. So we avoid the decision. I mean, they talked about this in the '80s, well before you were probably born. Was
Hey.
the reason that like many organizations, companies went with an Apple PC as opposed or I'm sorry, went with IBM PCs versus an Apple PC because they already had IBM mainframes, and so it was status quo to work with IBM, and if something went wrong, well, it's not on me, but if I
Mhm.
went with this crazy upstart company, Apple, well, then that's it. So
Yeah, that risk is
so
there.
yeah, so we just avoid then, making that change. So,
I mean, it makes sense.
mm,
So if we look at the Apple scenario, right? Let's take it back a step and make this more real. Where in other situations outside of the 80s before I was born do we see the status quo bias in everyday life? Because everybody has an Apple now, so I don't know if I can relate to that.
I have a PC. I don't know.
Actually, I do too.
Yeah,
I
well,
used to have an Apple.
I made you get a
You
PC.
made
There
me
you go.
switch.
Yeah. All right. So let's start obvious one, jobs, right? Jobs. I mean, we get stuck in a job that hopefully you don't, but people get stuck in their jobs.
Yeah, we find the situation where it's fine, right? It may not be perfect. It isn't terrible. There might be something better out there, but it's fine. Why would I change, right? Again, that risk is there. The decision's there. The effort that goes into making that change is a lot. So it's fine is fine.
Right, it's not terrible, right? The job's okay, it's not great, but hey, what job is ever great? And then, to change, what I gotta update my resume, I gotta network, I gotta interview, gotta, argue about how much I'm gonna get paid. I mean, it
Mhm.
just goes on and on and on. Yeah.
I'm exhausted just thinking about all that. I haven't looked at my
Yeah,
resume in 10 plus years. So,
thankfully. Whew, all right, yeah, and so thus what happens? People stay, right?
all right. So,
Yeah.
what else? What else can we look at here? Other examples, other
Well,
situations that people might run into on a daily basis.
alright, you already talked about streaming subscriptions, but any subscriptions, magazines, the food, orders that you get in, the Blue Dots or whatever those are, any of the kinds of those subscriptions. Your newspaper subscription, oh my god, it's so hard sometimes to cancel, like, your Wall Street Journal subscription, right? Gym memberships. I had a horrible experience in, like, canceling that. You had to either write a hand letter, like, type out letter with all the stuff, send it in, or go down to the gym. You couldn't just cancel online, right? So they make that friction even harder. There's software you don't use, processes at work that everyone complains about, but nobody changes. We could probably look at a couple of those within Lantern Group or Behavior Shift and probably figure out,
Yeah, yeah, let's not go too far down that rabbit hole. That one hits a little too close to home. And we could probably have a whole conversation about the friction side of the cancellations of businesses, right? Because that's intentionally designed to keep you in your status quo, right? Because they're
yeah.
making money off of it. So,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
think about the millions of dollars that a large company gets by having people not cancel their subscription.
Mhm.
So, the big gyms across the country, the big, Wall Street Journals, New York Times, etcetera, and they make it harder. And there's not necessarily an easy if they make it harder, it reduces that by thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people every year. That's real money, so
Yeah, yeah, it
they're
is.
doing some of these things intentionally. Um, there's another big one that we don't think about, but it's relationships, you know?
Ooh, that is a big one. And we
Yeah.
gotta tread lightly here in case my wife actually listens to us talk.
I don't think you have to worry about that one, but
Let's not tell
but I
people
mean, and
that.
it's not just romantic relationships. I mean, it's friendships. It's the acquaintances that you have on a regular day basis, right? We stick in those relationship patterns or in those relationships. I mean, you think about this with some friends, like friends from high school or friends from college or different things where, you've gone different
Mhm.
paths in your lives. And are you still really that close to them? I mean, there's a part of this we can get into relationship side of that, but there are some times where those can be really negative, like trying to get rid of those. And so we stick with them, even if they're not working for us, even if that person isn't there. And And that can make us feel uncertain, uncomfortable about, do we wanna change this? I mean, this person's been a friend. They were part of my development of who I am, or this is my romantic. I mean, divorce is just, people having to choose divorce. It's a big part. And
Mhm.
here I think is a thing about status quo that I think is really important, right? Status quo bias doesn't just keep us from making better choices. It slowly normalizes what we have. So we're not even necessarily looking out for something better.
Yeah, we get kinda stuck in that rut, and what at one point in time gave us angst and felt not great, we start to normalize and it becomes acceptable, and this is just what it is, and we're fine with it.
Exactly. We adapt. Over time, we stop asking, is this what I want? We just start looking around going, "Oh, this is my life. This is what I have. I guess I need to just adjust." It's a stoic kind of response in a certain
Mhm.
way, right? It's like, "Oh, okay," but it doesn't need to be that way, right?
And honestly, that's a little bit unsettling when you start thinking about it. I mean,
It should
life
be.
isn't that long, so to sit in your status quo for a very long time and normalize it is kinda uncomfortable to think about.
I mean, when you put it that way, it should be unsettling, right? I mean, because it means that inertia, the status quo bias is shaping your life more than, like, you choosing being intentional about the life that you wanna live, and that's
Mhm.
not a good thing in my mind, right?
Yeah, I would agree. Well, now that we brought the mood down and depressed everybody, let's turn this thing around a little bit. How do we break out of this trap? I mean, it feels like an invisible trap that we get sucked into. We might not even notice we're doing it. It's just happening to us and we're letting it. So what do we do to flip this thing around and break out of that trap?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways, and, one is kind of a mindset one. It's this idea of, flipping the default, right? This idea of, instead of asking, "Should I change?" Kinda take the counterintuitive, the counterfactual of this. If I weren't already in this relationship, if I wasn't already signed up for the streaming services, if I wasn't already, in this gym that I don't go to, would I choose it? Would I make that choice?
That's a really powerful reframe. So myself in my current state, imagining myself not in that situation, saying, would I choose to put myself in this situation currently?
Yeah. And again, it's mental gymnastics to a certain degree, and
Mhm.
it requires a little bit of effort, but if you can do that, then that kicks you out of that automatic, like, the inertia part that we talked about earlier, right? I guess this is just the way it is, different pieces of this, and you're going, I wouldn't choose this gym, or I wouldn't choose this
Mhm.
friend, or I wouldn't do that," right? So, it changes how you view it, it gives you that other option, so, um there's also this, like, element of creating specific decision moments. So status quo thrives on autopilot. Just that's the way our brain is, like, as we talked about, the inertia that we're already there, right? So we need to create intentional checkpoints, whether that's weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, where you are actively reviewing some of these key things. So again, think about this from, all right, we'll go with your easy thing, your streaming services, right? All right. Maybe every 6 months you just put on your calendar, review streaming services. And when you go in and you review those streaming services, you kind of have something that you look at to say, "Yep, I haven't watched HBO Max in 3 months. Time to get rid of it," right? Or whatever that would be. Doesn't have to be HBO Max in case you guys wanna be a sponsor of the show. So there you go.
Well, I think that's a really good thing to think about because again, you mentioned the autopilot, and when we let those things just cruise, unless we take that time to intentionally pause, reflect, and analyze whether or not it's adding to our lives or just existing, we're not gonna make change on it. And I think that's such a simple concept that if you take the time to do it, can be really powerful, but unless we think about it, we don't take the time to do it. So you're
Well, and
you're
we
taking that autopilot, turning it off, and you're interrupting that inertia to reevaluate it and put
yeah.
yourself back into the control seat, essentially.
And there's something even beyond just kicking ourselves out of the status quo. Those reflective moments can be really good for us overall as an individual, just to take a look back at a and we can spend another whole episode. I mean, we've talked about gratitude, right? So reflection often leads to gratitude about certain things. It also just kind of allows us to maybe look at patterns in our lives. And so we can look at those patterns and go, where is this going to take us? Is this the right pattern I want to be on? All sorts of really wonderful things about doing that reflection on a regular basis with maybe some processes put in place. Again, I think it's really cool. All right. Keep going on the just breaking out of status quo.
Mhm.
Another way of thinking about doing this is lowering the cost of the change. So make that change smaller. So we talked about changing a job, right? It's instead of finding a new job, maybe it's having a conversation or about what are the possibility of jobs out there. Maybe it's doing a little bit of networking. Maybe it's updating a section of your resume. So it's not saying, yes, I'm going to quit my job and find a new job, but it's like, oh, I'll take some of the steps that will lower that
Mhm.
cost. That's a smaller cost to me.
So it's, I mean, making it smaller and easier to kind of move in that direction. It's kind of like tiny habits. It's similar to our stepping stones and milestones in the Keystone goal journey, right? Everything's
Yeah.
about breaking it down, lowering the barrier, making it easier to start taking those actions and moving towards that potential goal.
Exactly. It's shrinking that barrier, getting it down. So that tiny habits thing is a really good analogy, right? Make it so it's not that big a deal. All right, yeah, I
Mhm.
can I can relook at my resume, run it through Chat GPT, say, "Hey, how can I update this?" Boom, done. Right? And now it's like, "Oh, that's one less thing if I do really think that this job is just meh and I wanna go, well, now I have an updated resume. Okay, so next let's do some networking. Okay. So it's like steps to the process. It is the milestones and stepping stones that we talk about in our Keystone Goal process. So there you go. And the kind of last thing here is this idea of we can use our defaults to our advantage. So design the environment that you're in so that the better choice is the default. So again, we go back up to that research that the defaults become the status quo. So we've there's lots of really good research on things of setting up your environment to make that better choice as the default for you.
So this is getting into kind of creating your own choice architecture through your environment, right?
Exactly.
You're recognizing the fact that, hey, I'm going to get stuck in the default. You're aware of that, so you're saying, okay, I'm going to create a default that's in my best interest as opposed to
Positive for me. Yes.
negative
That
for me. It's creating automatic savings transfers from your checking account to your savings account every month, or using time blocking, saying every morning for 1 hour, this is my focus time. And then when you get that notification on your phone, it's saying, hey, this is a reminder to get stuck in that good status quo, essentially.
Yeah, like, hey, I'm gonna journal the status quo is journaling every night, for 10 minutes. It's the status quo, like you said, automatic savings or, there's different ways of, like, setting up your 401k to have automatic increases every time you get a pay raise. So you don't have to go and do anything, it automatically does it for you. There's all sorts of those types of tools that are out there that you can go. And so instead of fighting our human nature, let's leverage that human nature. So
I love it. It's a really interesting way to think about it because it kind of feels neutral and natural to just do nothing, right? When you're cruising along, right? Just to let it happen.
Yeah, but it's not, right? That's the key piece of this because doing nothing is still a choice. It's just a choice that we don't often think about or question or look back on and say, "Hey, is this the choice I wanna make?" Yeah.
Yeah, you're making a choice without actually analyzing the positives and negatives of that choice, right? And those unexamined choices over time, just like interest in your savings account, just like compounding habits that we've talked about in the past, they add up and they start to have a bigger effect on your life overall.
Yeah, they become your life, right? That's
That's a
it.
good way to
So,
say it.
yeah, if you didn't choose it today, would you choose it again tomorrow? I think that's a question that every one of our listeners should ask today. It's like,
And I
all
think
right,
that's a really powerful, really important question to walk away with here and to wrap this conversation up.
yeah, might be worth asking. So go ahead and you know, go out and shift your life today by asking, if you didn't choose it today, would you choose it again tomorrow?